Greetings, this is Kijin, and welcome to my overview for Eridu, being a modded nation of Ur in the Hellenika mod. Hellenika mod is a very extensive mod that focuses on early age. It expands on existing nations, quite often giving them substantial changes like with Ur, for example, but also adds a couple unique ones. I'm hardly familiar with all of them, as this game that I'm recording this video for is about to turn 40 or so. Of course, I know much more than I did know at turn 1, but then just number of changes is too significant to be aware of, so I'm kind of rolling with it. Still, it's a very cool mod, very fun to play, very unique experience, and Ur being a nation in vanilla that I actually really don't like, in the sense that I haven't even played them, but they either always die to somebody else or I just straight up kill them, so they always felt a little bit weak to me. I might be wrong. But Eridu, yeah, it's definitely much stronger than the vanilla Ur. So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about the mechanics. So, your race is Enkidus. So those are big, hairy men. One of the biggest changes for it is that compared to vanilla, they have 50% more HP. So that's a significant buff already. But they are also cheaper resource-wise, so you can actually mass a lot more troops from your force. Oh, they're also cheaper in recruitment points. So yeah, both resources and recruitment points. They prefer hit scale +1. Dryland force without the royal couple costs unrest. Demolishing them grants 1200 gold. So your royal couple being NC and N2, you basically want to have a pair of them in every of your forts because of this mechanic. Besides reducing unrest, or rather not causing the unrest when they're present. No, actually, sorry, they do reduce the unrest as well. They also increase point defense in that province by 4, if I remember correctly, every turn, and there's no limit to that. So while your elders are, I'm just going to mention that now, are province defense organizers, they bring it only to 19, and those guys, they can bring it to 100. So the longer game goes, the more forts with 100 province defense you will have, which is not bad, even though the province defense of Eridu isn't like amazing, but it's of course very numerous. The demolition then grants 1200 gold, so that basically means that when you capture somebody else's fort, you might choose to just destroy it and get that gold back. This is the same cost that you building your fortified city is. So because they cost 60% more, your fortified city costs 1200. That kind of lets you, move your infrastructure back from whatever lands you have captured from somebody else closer to your core lands. And there is good reason to do that, which I'll get into in a moment. You start with Grand Citadel as well, so that's really good capital. And can build underwater forts because of Kululu component of the nation. Yeah, 3 tribes, civilized metal workers and priest mages in forts. Metal workers, I'd say, is still a bit of a over exaggeration because it's just bronze, so the quality is rather sad. Hey, but it's early ages. Although there are some nations that they have lords with like 20-something protection because apparently they are really good in crafting. And there's a Mekon as well. Got to remember about Mekon. So yeah, they're hardly good metal workers. Ferocious hunter gatherers and bone readers in swamps. So bone readers in particular are very cool mages. And pastoral wildmen and mighty shamans everywhere else. And mighty shamans they are indeed. Sacred dragons and in swamps and in capital. Nature, earth, water, and death, rare, astral. Nature is definitely one of your main paths together with water, because you'll have access to water 2 and nature 2 quite easily. Actually, nature 3 or even nature 4, actually. Water 2, maybe 3 sometimes. Earth, similar story, 2 to 3, so also quite potent. You also have air 2 very easily from your mages, but you have very good summon that's air 3. So actually magic so far is quite good in those 4 paths. Death, recruitment wise, maximum is 2 if you roll it well with the bone readers. Rare astral on your mages is attached only to the elder as far as surface goes, it's very low chance, but also a Kulil to queen. But again, I think it's like astral 2 at best, if I'm not wrong. And actually, sorry, Kulil Sage can also roll astral 1. Astral is fixed much later in the game with Conjuration 8 when you can summon Apkalus. which are your very powerful mages with high astral. I think it's 4 astral and other paths, but yeah, they're definitely potent late game mages that do fix that problem. Strong priests, because most of your, all of your mages from forts are priests of various degrees. So Gala and some are priest 1, Gudu, Iship, and yeah, Gudu and Iship are holy 2s, or priest level 2s rather. N2 and NC are priest level 3s. And Cinnamon Story underwater, Kululu Queen and Kululu Kings, they're also priest 3s, while Kululu Sage is not a priest at all. And about recalling, Galas have an ability that I believe it's called Eligist, and I think every Gala counts basically for 3 priest levels when recalling your god that will not lose power when brought back. So you can be quite aggressive with your god if that's what you choose to be, because even if you lose him, you can recall him pretty quickly, and there will be no real punishment for that by losing most of a nature path if you have it. So yeah, back to the mechanics a little bit. Hellenika just adds a ton of various mechanics. Okay, the big one is that when your capital has NC and N2, and they have certain artifacts equipped, there are a pair of boots on both of them. At the start of spring, your capital will gain, I believe, 4,000 or 5,000 population, and also they will spawn a free Sears, and we'll get to Sears later. So that's a cool thing. Also, the other interesting aspect of Eridu is that you kind of play them tall. It's sort of a unique thing in Dominions, because usually want to spread your forts so they don't steal resources from each other, and you want the good provinces to be forted. And you can still do that with Eridu. It just the palisades are really expensive, but there's a mechanic where you can either use a ritual to do it, be it remotely or in a province you are present, but that would require, of course, lab to be present. Or you use an item called the Down Mortar, where you create a site in a province called Primordial Clay. And Primordial Clay, it's a very big mechanic for Eridu. What it does, if your domain is present, it increases the income of that province, but also it increases growth and production in that province as a site, and it gives you a chance to give you a water or earth gems. Those chances are reasonable, like they're about 25% or something, maybe lower. I actually can't really remember right now, but because you'll want to have them, everywhere or almost everywhere, this is a very significant income for gems of those two types. But wherever Primordial Clay is present, you cannot have a fort. Fort will be automatically destroyed if there is Primordial Clay present, unless you cast certain ritual, which represents you extending your capital as quarters. Basically, your capital is so great and so huge that another province with a fort in there is just another quarter of the city. So when you cast that spell, initially you have a variant that costs you 40 gems and cast it up to 4 times, and of course it has to neighbor your capital because it's based on sites. You have a site called the First City, right? It creates a quarters there, and those quarters allow a fort to coexist on top of the Primordial Clay. You can also cast Primordial Clay on top of your capital because you don't start with it, and but you have to also cast that ritual, otherwise you'll blow up your capital, which would suck. It's still a way to increase your income. So you kind of are growing your capital as a tall city, just like in Civilization or other games where there are more or less valid tall playstyles where you focus on very few or even single one city. That's kind of the case for Eridu here. Of course, you can build forts elsewhere, and you probably will be doing that if there's a very good province or a key province just in general. You will just not be placing a Primordial Clay there, because you cannot cast the ritual there if it's not adjacent to already existing quarter. The other thing that the quarter will do, it will actually allow to recruit you your Sacred and Kidu. That's pretty cool. Also, about spawning the zeros from the royal marriage event that's caused by the NC and N2 being present in your capital, you cannot recruit Sirushes to begin with until you get the first one. Only after you get the first one, you can start recruiting Sirushes. And there's good reason for that because those guys are insane. And as you'll see, my pretender build, it's gonna be about those guys. Also, actually, let's talk a little bit about Kululus. So Kululus building an underwater fort, it also costs you 1200, so it's very expensive. But there's a ritual, there's a nuke ritual that you can cast once per game, where it automatically clears any province defense that there is in an underwater province and spawns a fort that has its walls cracked, so it's ready to be stormed, and gives you a small army of Kululus led by a king that will let you grab that fort, and that's how you begin your hopefully successful expansion underwater. And you really do want to do it because Kulul sages are amazing researchers, but we'll get to them sooner than later. Out of any core mechanics, I think that's basically it. I think other things I will talk about more in the game itself. I'm trying to wonder if there's anything else missing that's crucial. I don't think so. So let's talk about units themselves. So your basic Enkidu soldier, it's again much better than vanilla because he has way more hit points. But I mean it's pretty hard hitting. Like it's almost like a two-handed weapon for some human nations because of great strength of Enkidu. But their armor is very bad, and they have about average stat line, so it's not too bad. They're a bit militia, but as long as they don't get repelled too much. A much better choice is the Spear Guard because Spear is a length 3. You can repel some shorter weapon units, or at least not get repelled by themselves. And 18 damage is very respectable. It's a Pierce, so it's better against armor than Axe would be, but it's of course worse against low armor. You otherwise prefer that bonus damage from slashing damage. But other than that, that line is basically identical. Minus the spear, and they have better armor. So slightly more resources, but it's pretty low still. And armor, well, yeah, it leaves a lot to be desired. Not only it has low protection, but it also lowers your defense. So yeah, and shields, yeah, they don't make great shields either. Now to the much better troop is your Urguard, and Urguard you can only recruit in. Urguard you can only recruit in forts. They actually use bronze hatchets this time. I'm sorry, those use bronze hatchets too. But they also wear armor, and they have slightly more elite stats. They gain extra attack, extra defense, they gain morale, they gain more hit points. They're also slightly more expensive, but for 3 gold, this is, I'd say, worthwhile upgrade. They are also slightly stronger, so more damage. But they also have castle defense bonus 5, so you can easily make a lot of those guys. And it can be truly nightmarish to actually take forts of Eridu if they have a lot of Urguard inside. I mean, 5 castle defense, that makes them have what? Oh, that's interesting. I thought this is like each point. I guess it's not the direct translation to 5 points of castle defense, but still 3.8 defense per unit. It's really bloody good. So with enough of them, your forts are really hard to take. On to a little bit more specialized unit that is added in a mod itself. It's Enkidu Demolisher. So this guy has rather horrible stats, both in attack and defense. 9 attack only on that wall smasher. However, this is a ridiculously hard hitting weapon. 32 points, and also has a massive siege bonus of 5. You can easily, again, get a lot of those guys out of your fort. So suddenly enemy forts can just crumble under hairy men smashing them with their mullets. Also, it can be really good against some specific things that rely on their protection or resistances, but are easy to hit, low defense. Definitely Monolith wouldn't want those demolishes running in there, that's for sure. With enough harassment, they'll also be hitting regular units, so it's not like they are complete pushovers in combat. But, I wouldn't really be using them against elves, for example, because you're not going to be hitting with that wall smasher them. So a quite specialized unit, but it's good in what it does, that's for sure. Now to the Sacred. Sacreds, of course, they're capital unique, but also when you extend the quarters, like I mentioned, you can also start recruiting them in those provinces. They are just more elite Urguard with much better armor for Ur standards or Enkidu Eridu standards. Bronze Scale Haberk is way better, plus 3 points of protection. So yeah, together with their little bit of natural protection, 13 body, it's not too bad. And of course, you'll have mages that will make it better, but we'll get to that once we're talking about mages. Shield is still rather bad. It's Sacred, that's bodyguards, so that's helpful because there are definitely some assassinations in Hellenika. But the weapon is very interesting. So it's built-in magic damage with 13 attacks, so quite good. And it's soul slaying. It's worth remembering that you can use that soul slaying against some things. And there are some things that are in Hellenika just immortal, not just vampires or liches, or liches rather. So that soul slaying is very cool, somewhat niche effect that if it comes to play, it can be very devastating for your opponent. But all in all, this is a very solid Sacred. It's expensive, okay? Let's not lie to ourselves. 29 gold, it probably could be better, but built-in magic damage weapon, although, you might still want to take magic weapons because of your Mushusus and Sirushes, is quite good. And you can get a lot of them. You can definitely get a lot of them. They take like resistances blesses quite well, or stat ones will also help out. Yeah, and 41 hit points. They're no slouches. When you give them regeneration, 5 hit points regeneration is quite respectful for 2 guys per square. They're not even giants, but yeah, they're definitely very durable with right buffs. And finally, your last fourth recruit unit is Enkidu Hornblower. I wish this guy actually wore armor too. That's kind of weird that he's wearing force. It doesn't look nice at all. Like, come on, you should be dignified by your role over Hornblower. This is your standard, and it's standard too. So it fixes your kind of mediocre morale on your regular units by giving it +2 to the squad. So mixing a couple of those guys in every squad is definitely beneficial. They're also slightly slower than other Enkidu. So yeah, that's very good. Like as long as your standard bears are slower, that means that they will not suicide themselves that easily. Not much else to say about that though. Let's leave dragons for last. Let's talk about some foreign recruits. So Enkidu, that's your peasant Enkidu that you can hire in any province, or rather any province that's not the swamp. Yeah, club. It's really not good. Club is the weapon. The stat line is like Enkidu warrior basically, minus worse weapon and lack of shield. Not much to say. There has to be some good reason why you'd want to be getting them. The better option is, let's just jump straight into it. Actually, no, sorry. Let's talk about Enkidu Archer. So this is one recruit outside of your forests, outside of your forts and outside of swamp that you actually might want to consider getting, because it's a longbow that has 14 damage. It's a very respectable damage on a bow with a good range, with some strength buff, and you can have precision buffs as well. You don't have really access. Okay, that's the thing. You don't have access to fire arrows, so that kind of limits their mid-late game viability. Although of course then there's also arrow fan and stuff like that. But I could see myself getting those guys in some matchups, like against elves. Yeah, totally. I would mass Enkidu archers. So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's not a bad recruit at all. Now for the melee, for the other 2 melee recruits, there's Enkidu warrior. So this one comes with a spear. It's a stone spear, so a little bit worse than... Not actually a little, it doesn't have attack and has damage lower than the bronze one. But it's still better than the club guy. And yeah, the stat line otherwise is pretty much the same, with pretty low resources. And the other one has a club. Again, the only reason you want to recruit clubs is if you are just running to something that's resistant to all damage types except of blunt. Because I wouldn't be ever counting on head hits with that, right? Now, the recruits in the swamp. So those are every province except a fort and a swamp. These are swamp only. And I think if you build a fort on swamp, you also still have access to them. So Enkidu hunters, those are your javelins, but the big thing is they're stealthy and they have Berserker 1. Berserker 1 maybe is not a big deal, but stealthy is. So those could be your potential raiders if you want to do some sneaky stuff. Again, lower in resources, lower in recruitment points. They're kind of okay. Much better. Troop would be Enkidu River. Oh, okay, but this is very sad. They are 24 recruitment points. So you'll actually not be recruiting them. Let's see. Your chosen are 9, and you get them out of forts where you have a ton of recruitment points. And rivers are 23 in swamps. And swamps have really, of course, low population. Almost always. Like if you get 4,000 in swamp, well done. That's pretty good. You might be able to get 2 of them or 1 of them per turn. If that wasn't the case, they're actually quite solid troops. So they also come with stealthy, but they're Berserker free. So now we're talking. They're very hard hitting. If they with this big of a HP pool, they'll definitely survive a hit or 2. So that will suddenly jump to 15 attack for 25 damage. Yeah, no, they would be very killy, even if somewhat squishy units. But yeah, you're not gonna be getting them. They're also not cheap. So that's a shame. I wish they were cheaper recruitment point wise. They're also pillagers, but again, because of this recruitment points, I can't see myself ever getting enough of them to be worthwhile. I promised that, or rather, I said that dragons will be last. So let's talk about underwater. Kululu, just a regular Kululu, just more hit points again because the same buff for everyone. It's a rather bad underwater unit. The saving grace is rather high strength, so hard hitting, piercing attack, and the high hit points. And yeah, this is like the ghetto variant without any armor. So let's look at the armored one. Yeah, bronze scale, Kuras. Why can't you wear shield? Come on, guys. If they had shield, it would be much more reasonable. But as it is, meager 8 defense means that they will be hit a lot. But yeah, solid enough damage and hit points that they can survive. And you can also point buff them underwater with stuff like moss body and protection. So they gain some value. But otherwise, the troops, the Kululus are really bad troops. So after like initial expanding with them and whatnot, hopefully you'll find better indie pop type underwater that you could get. Like, I don't know, ideally Amber, Tritons, or some Knights. Yeah, those would do much better for you than those. Besides, of course, water metal spam. Now, let's talk commanders. Scout, slightly more expensive Scout. You know, he gets extra 2 point of movement, which can matter sometimes, I guess, and it's tankier. Not much to say. It's a Scout. Enkidu, now this is a quite unique thing. So there are actually 2 variants of him. The other variant can be recruited only in your capital, and it costs 0 recruitment points. So you can actually get a lot of them in your capital at once. They're all obviously incredibly cheap. But what do they offer really? Like, I mean, this is just crush that line. They're old. I mean, to be fair, for the gold, maybe it's not that trash, but they're not gonna be hitting anything with 8 attack. They are good leadership, so they're your troop faring unit if you need it for that purpose. And the other aspect is defense organizer. So you'll see me using them actually a lot for the purpose of saving up gold on getting PD to quite high values, like 19 PD, right? I mentioned that earlier, is the maximum they can get you to. And if they do, hey, they definitely paid for themselves with 15 gold and meager 12 gold upkeep per year, so 1 gold per turn. Yeah, if it saves you a province from some indie attack or from raiding, especially if it's a good pop type, yeah, they're very worthwhile investment. And also the reason you want to be getting them anyways is because of that 5% for Astral. And you wanted to start site searching for Astral. That's very important. Kickstarting your Astral site searching is a big deal for you to get your summons, the Apkalus later in the game. Other than that, their research is rather non-existent unless they get that Astral, then it jumps to like 7. A unique unit for sure. So pretty cool. And Kidu Commander, it's not much to say. It's slightly better. Actually, it's about the normal commander level, right? 60 leadership without formations or morale bonus. They do their job, right? Not much else to say. Now, time for mages. In forts, of course, and then we'll talk about other foreign recruits. So Galas are very cheap. Actually, I'm just gonna say it right now. All of your mages, except of N2 and NC, cost only one recruitment point. So you are actually getting a lot of mages. Like your capital can recruit 3 mages per turn, which is unheard of in Dominance normally. And your first better Palisade city that you construct will be getting 2 of your mages. So that's really, really good actually. The research surprisingly good with Eridu because of it. For Gala, it's pretty damn cheap mage for 7 research. If you go for magic, they're very efficient researchers, actually very, very efficient researchers. The Spellsinger, the Eliges, so that's the God Recalling bonus. They come with some supply bonus, that's a common feature of mages for Eridu in general. And yeah, Nature 1. Nature 1's great. It's a protection, it's a swarm. It's a holy one as well, so yeah, either for blessing or banishes. What do you need them for? So yeah, pretty damn good. But they're hardly best mage you have. The best mage you have, I would say, is Salme. Why? For 25 gold, you get water nature crossbuff, and this is, of course, incredible crossbuff because of Moss Body. Moss Body that will drastically increase survivability of both your units, your sacreds, your mages. It opens up some late game casting of, for example, Frozen Heart as well. Or maybe not so late game, but middle late game. They suddenly become also pretty potent combat mages besides just fluffers. And yeah, they can even do some thugging, right? You have her, she can boss body herself, give her protection, give her quickness. If you want to carry gems with her, she can also give her extra regeneration, enlarge herself. Somewhat low hit points for an Enkidu race, but it's all pretty good, right? So yeah, they're awesome. That's the mage I know I will be making the most of, and I think for a good reason. They're pretty awesome. And yeah, 9 research for 100, that's solid. Now for somewhat specific mages, so there's Gudu. We're jumping up a notch in the price, 50% more expensive than some. What we're getting for this price is a mage that gets 2 paths in either water or in either air or earth, and that's very good. Like it's much better to have 2 in those 2 paths than just 1 and something else. They are your early game side searchers for those very important air gems, and not nearly as important, but also important earth gems. That's for your crafting, that's for your summons. Good stuff. In combat, of course, later in the game, if there's storm power, they suddenly can summon a bunch of air elementals. Earth ones, earth power, those are earth elementals, but also important combat buffs such as Legions of Steel, Strength of Giants. They can do earth melt for you. They can make you hammers too with boots. So yeah, those are really solid mages. You probably will be getting a lot of them as well. It all depends on how much gold you have to spare on that turn. Now E-ships. So E-ships are actually sorry. Are those guys? I think I said earlier that they are holy 2. My bad. They are holy 1 priests. So E-ships now they are priest level 2s and they start with water 2, and the random paths are air, earth, and nature. Nature, of course, that opens up more Moss Body caster potentially. But there's also Frozen Mist, for example. They can summon water elementals in a combat on surface. Water gets a lot of hate, but I really like water. With water too, they can also cast quickening. Quickness. Quickening would require a little bit more water. But hey, that's water boosters are one of the cheaper ones once you get to construction 6. So you get the 5 water gem bracelet. You can give them the chest piece. Suddenly they're water 4. E-ship can cast some nasty water buffs for your army. And there are some really nasty water spells as well, like let's not forget Encase in Ice. Since your Mushusus and Circes are have swamp survival, you can also cast Quagmire, and that's going to be good for you in a combat. So yeah, E-ships, the main thing is they're quite expensive for those paths, sure. But they're also very important for you because they cast a lot of unique spells, right? So for the whole extension of of the quarters that I mentioned earlier, that's who is casting it mainly. You can also cast it with your NC, but it's cheaper to do it with E-ships as far as the recruitment points and gold cost for a mage and mage turns. So yeah, they do that. They have you have cheaper version of Voice of Apsu that they can cast because it requires holy level or priest levels rather. There's also a unique spell that you can cast on top of Primordial Clay that gives you gold. I think it's like 10 water and gives you a couple hundred gold. So it's actually quite good conversion of gem to gold ratio. And again, because you want to have as many Primordial Clays everywhere, the longer game goes, the stronger you'll get. You'll be getting a lot of those water gems and earth gems. So yeah, they're pretty awesome for that. You search remotely for water with them very cheaply. Like I think it's one water gem for the unique casting of site searching with Eridu. So that's a great deal to do. Yeah, pretty cool guys. Now that's the variant that costs 0 recruitment points, right? That I mentioned. And now for your recruitment point 3, Entu is the queen, and she gets those random paths. In ideal world, you get either Earth for Earth 3 or Nature for Nature 2. The other ones, they're not bad, but Earth 3 is in particular big deal. If you get a first N2 that you recruit for your capital, so you trigger those spring cam events. If you get the Earth random, that's amazing because the unique boots that you equipped on your royal capital to trigger that event, they are actually +2 Earth magic. So suddenly your N2 in your capital becomes Earth 5 with that. And that gives you some flexibility of who do you want to cast some important globals, for example, with. Not to mention, of course, being very strong mage to sit on your capital and defend it potentially from some threats. And yeah, she's of course priest for level 3, so that's her divine blessing. The leadership is not so great. That's the domain of NC, but she's inspirational too, so it's not like troops will be they'll still get some extra morale. It's something. So yeah, pretty cool mage. Yeah, it does open up some crafting for you as well. Oh, and just to mention, E-ship, the water earth random is important one to get early on because that's the cross path that you require to craft the down mortars, the items that allow you to create a primary clay site. That's very important. Like the earliest you start doing that, the better for you. Now the other one is NC. Now this is your proper commander of troops. Can do formations. Those give actually +2 morale to your unit, so pretty damn good. And he has those cross paths. Ideally, of course, you get water cross path because water free gives you, besides water elementals, the Quagmire. Maybe not so much rain because you can cast rain with E-ships, but it's gonna be less fatiguing. And later in the game, with boosters, you cast Quickening with him for a big number of troops, just getting that buff. So yeah, they're pretty good. You kind of really want to be moving them as pair because even though you mainly want to have them on fort, right, to reduce that unrest and increase PD, even when they move together, they still increase point defense of a province they're in. So you can just, wherever you're invading someone and you take a province, suddenly your point defense will jump to 4, right, in that province. Or hell, you might want to, which you probably will see in the game, where I will just have a pair of them sitting on an unforted province that has lab, so they're at least researching. But hey, I still want to get the PD up there. I don't know, it might be throne. It might be a throne that I just haven't had money to fort. But I can at least increase point defense thanks to those two. So yeah, that's very cool. Very cool. Now for the foreign recruits, that the chief, it's a commander that you just are real desperate to get. But hey, Beastmaster 1 is something. Enkidu Hunter Chief and Headhunter, those are the guys who get in Swamp. They're stealthy, so they can lead your stealthy Swamp guys. The Headhunter is interesting in sense that he has a magic weapon. It can come into play sometimes, I suppose. And the stat line is good enough. Berserker 4 as well, so yeah, he's gonna be really angry when smack him. Suddenly hitting you 17 attack, 27 damage. Yeah, that can surprise some people early in the game, I suppose. But now, so the unique mage that you can get from Swamp is the Bone Reader. That's Earth and Death cross path. And the random paths are Water, Earth, and Death. So, of course, Death 2 is the big deal because that gives you better site searching. I mean, you can site search with Death 2, but if I can roll for Death 2, I will try, and I will be site searching with Death 2 instead of Death 1, just to make sure that I gain quite a larger percentage of the Death sites. Earth 2 is some alternative for you to get into crafting various Earth items, hammers, and whatnot. Water, yeah, Water, it's something, again, maybe for crafting. I honestly can't quite remember the cross paths between Water and Death. I'm sure there's something, but it gives you also crafting of some interesting items that require Death as well, so that's that. But yeah, you want Death for, well, I mean, they can of course cast some reanimation, so it gives you undead chaff, and in combat, with Death 2, you give them stuff as well, they become Death free. You can do some skeleton spamming with them potentially. You can twice burn the Death 2 or Death 1 with a staff, so actually when he dies, he becomes size 3 white mage, which is quite good one. There are also fortune tellers, so that's useful. If you take misfortune, that can help you out. I will be getting them for sure, just to have at least one in every fort or vital province that they can sit on and maybe prevent some bad events, right? That's always something. So they're not great researchers, but not bad either. Quite expensive, but yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. Now, Enkidu Shaman, this is actually probably your best mage. The reason for that is Earth and Nature paths. Nature in particular, of course, one of the best paths in the game. But you can even get to Nature 5. Of course, the chance for that is very low, but there's a reasonable chance to get Nature 4. And yeah, Air 3 as well is possible. Water, if you get Water, I mean, I guess they can be thugs. Sure, why not? But for that price, I'd be a little bit worried about using them in that way. Don't be counting on those, but when those paths happen and you get like Nature 5 potentially or Air 4, that's of course incredible. That opens up so many combat enhancements, for the whole fight. Easy cast of Relief, Howl. They are also your Foul Vapors casters. If you get Water random, why not? You can do that as well. Hell, they even come with built-in poison resistance, just as if they asked to do that. They are also amazing site searchers for the very important paths for you. So if you get like Earth random, yeah, you're site searching with Air free, Nature free, that's gonna give you most of the sites. Sure, there are some incredible sites that require 4 in that path, but they're so rare that I wouldn't feel bad about missing them just because I'm not searching with 4 in that path. So yeah, amazing mages. They're very expensive though, so at least you will not be making one every turn. They are foreign recruits, so you cannot have fort built. So yeah, one every 2 turns from a lab province of any kind except of swamp, of course. Now for the underwater, Kululus. So Kulul commander, I mean, it's just a regular underwater commander, suffice to say. Now King. King is holy free, or rather priest free. I keep on saying holy, but we all know what I mean. And just 1 water. Still, that opens up him a casting of unique site searching again for Eridu. Voice of Apsu is finding water sites, and there's that other one, Voice of Tiamat, I believe. So it's also a much cheaper version. Instead of 8 water gems, I think it costs you only 4, but it requires that priest levels to be cast. So he can do that. And yeah, he's your good leader underwater. You don't really have secrets underwater besides him and the queen, so that's just kind of whatever. I guess he can smite or banish undead underwater. So I mean, that's basically it. Actually, sorry. There's also a mechanic with Kuluru to Queen and King as well. So first, let's talk about Queen. She's really expensive as well for underwater mage. That comes with quite crazy split of magic. So you can have one path in 4 different schools. You can go up to water free. You can go to nature free. You can get sprinkling of air and astral. Neither are bad actually. But you probably would mainly want to get some water or actually in particular nature because that's the best access for your underwater nature. And that gives you like wooden warriors underwater. And she can cast Moss Body as well. So yeah, that's pretty good. And actually, yeah, that supply bonus, just whatever. I mean, a lot of Eridu. Actually, do all Eridu mages come with supply bonus? I think so, yeah. The mechanic between king and queen is that when you have both present in underwater province, it actually doubles its income. So in an ideal scenario, you cast that fancy ritual that spawns you a free fort in some very highly defended underwater province that you happen to spot close to your starting position. And and I didn't mention that spell also gives that province 10,000 population. So even if the province is shitty, it becomes quite good, right? From 3,000 population to 13,000, it's respectable. But if it's 10,000 province and you make it 20,000, you have a free fort there, and then you get Kulur to Queen and the King. Yeah, that suddenly becomes a moneymaker for you. It's quite solid. It's quite solid. Now, sages, those guys are amazing. They're not cheap, but they are insane researchers. They have Adept Researcher plus 12. I think that's a significant buff from what they actually have in vanilla. I think they have like only plus 3 or something. Sad like that. So plus 12. They're very good researchers. That's why it's quite solid if you manage to cast that ritual early on and start spamming those guys. And yeah, they split you to... they're on the access for Astral if you need some crafting maybe. Or site searching for astral or air underwater. Although again, you'll be doing Voice of Tiamat, so sorry. Astral is the only path you can actually use them to site search, which you probably don't want to. You want them to be researching and instead send like the Elder with astral random underwater with a ring, or even better, just cast the arcane probing underwater. That also would work. But yeah, he can also get nature random. So sorry, I think I kind of was mistaken. Those guys can also be your Moss Body casters underwater. But of course, the water free is the best one you can get underwater because whoever spams more water elementals wins. And yeah, you have good access to them. I mean, even water 2 ones, you cast water power and he becomes water free. If he's water free by default, you can cast a lot more before you go to sleep. You can cast some useful underwater spells, like water ward, or friendly currents. And they're quite hard hitting with Frozen Heart once you get there. That gives quite a bit of damage when they're high path in the water. But yeah, mainly those are your researchers and also combat mages for underwater wars if you are brave enough to fight proper water nation underwater, or maybe someone that's not a proper water nation but also tries to expand underwater. They give you a solid edge over your opponent. Now, going back to dragons, so those are your strongest units and the units that you'll see I will revolve my build around. So Mushusu, that one from vanilla. It might be slightly better, I don't know actually. But yeah, you can recruit only 1 per turn of your capital, but you can also, that's the change I believe that the mod makes, you can also recruit them in any swamp. So if you have good spawn, if you are lucky and get early swamps, you can be making a much more significant number of Mushusu than your opponents might expect. And they are strong units, as we can see. Good hit points, high hit points. Size 5, so they can be trampled technically, but they can also take enlargement thanks to that. Very high strength, good attack. Not very good defense though, even if they come with unsurroundable. Decent enough natural protection, so they don't really take protection buffs that well. Of course, Iron Skin will help. Pretty high magic resistance and pretty damn good morale as well. They come with Fear 5. They're of course sacred. 15 poison resist. Now that's the big stuff. They're Spring Immortality. So basically, wherever they die, they will come back to life in a spring. So be it a whole year of waiting time or only 1 month, they come back to life in spring. That makes them quite a nightmare to deal with, because even if your opponent beats your army or killed a lot of them, if you have time to survive till spring, they will all just come back to life. And again, with good spawn, or with some good luck as far as getting swamp provinces around you, you'll be getting a lot of them. Hell, I mean, I would even consider warring someone just if they have good access to swamps, or I would be aggressively using diplomacy to like purchase swamp provinces of someone just to get access to making as many mushus as possible. There's no reason why you don't want to be recruiting them every turn from the moment you can afford it and never stop. Yeah, they're awesome. They're not even animals, so it's not like animal counters work against them. They can still be, of course, 16 magic resistance can be exploited by some nations. There are some strong nations that use like astral spells of various kind that can bypass that and deal with them. But later in the game, you'll also have your Amwab Kalus that can cast anti-magic, so that helps with that problem. Now, to the real deal. Cirrus. Oh, this boy is strong. So you can't recruit them for first year, like I mentioned, only after you get the first one. And you're actually getting one for free every year, so that's that. That ritual, that ceremony of wedding happens every year. Every time it's a free series. 600 gold is a chunk, okay? So it probably would be quite hard to justify of getting any of those guys in the first year. Like, where are you gonna get that gold from? From second year onwards, yeah, that's much more reasonable to be able to get that gold to spare. And honestly, I would rather pass on a mage turns, especially because you have, up to 3 mages recruitment from your capital and 2 of your any fort. I would pass mage recruitment as long as that means I get Sirius that turn. Sirius should be recruited every turn from the moment you can recruit them. Because they're incredibly powerful. They are, of course, sacred. They are Fear 30. I've never seen anything with Fear 30. I don't know, there might be some pretender that has that. That's insane. And you can have, again, quite a few of them if you're making them every turn like you should. So they can rout armies by themselves incredibly easy. They have 01. That helps them out with survivability. Animal 05, so good luck to animals hitting them. Poison resistance 15. Now, that's the major drawback of them. They're magic beings. Okay, there are some specific counters that target magic beings that can mess up Sirushes, like control magic, right? Where they just steal this bad boy from you. So that's worth keeping in mind. That might be worth considering MR in your bless if you go like high astral, because just gonna point it out now, they don't have magic damage. So magic weapons. Because in my build, as you'll see, I'll be relying on my dragons. I do take magic weapons, but I didn't have high enough astral I couldn't squeeze it in. But it's worth considering of doing that because, yeah, bumping their magic resistance, which is already very high to begin with. Like, let's not kid ourselves. 18 magic resistance is really good. But if it's 21 on your regular, like, they're close to being super combatant units, right? Yeah, that would be great. High morale, but that morale isn't really that big of a deal because look at that, the Berserker 5. They get only slightly damaged. Someone chips off from their actually really good natural protection of 17. They have huge bulk of hit points. And yeah, they suddenly jump to 19 or 20 attack, hitting you for 30, 28, 18, 20. Yeah, those guys are incredibly deadly. And yeah, their protection jumps to 22. That Berserker is crazy good. Swamp survival, so yeah, Quagmire, just like with Mushosus, Quagmire is a benefit for you. Recuperation, because why not? They're just so strong that they regrow their limbs if someone dares to chop it off. That's great. And look at that, Dominion Spreader. I mean, those guys are so stacked. just by getting those guys, your dominion might be dominating other people. Not only so I'm gonna mention that in a second, but yeah, you keep those guys in your capital. That still spreads your dominion around you. But you go on the offense, and basically, if you have some number of those sirushes in your army, wherever you go, it suddenly becomes your dominion potentially. So it's super strong effect. That means that if you go sieging someone in a turn or two without even bothering to preach, you're in your own dominion. It gives you morale bonus, takes it away from your opponent. If your if your opponent has like a Titan pretender, he cannot use it nearly as easily. He will not get blessed because it's your dominion now, and you can bring in your own god if you choose to. So yeah, that's insanely good effect. Like what? Natively, any nation can get access to Dominion Spreader if they're construction 9 and they're making juggernauts. I mean, that's how wild effect this is. I don't really even know what like regular units or commanders in vanilla actually have Dominion Spreader. It's pretty rare effect in general, so that's super strong. But yeah, 600 gold. That's a change. Now. It says that their upkeep is 0, and same thing with Mushusus. That's not true. The upkeep is, of course, very significant, especially on the so their upkeep is ridiculous. But as long as your Mushusus are in your own dominion, they cost no upkeep. So that's awesome. As long as your Sirushes are in your capital, they cost no upkeep. So wherever you bring out Sirushes to war, you are gonna feel that in your coffers. The upkeep is significant. If you bring, of course, depends on number you bring out, but I don't know, 5 to 10. If it's like year 2, late year 2 war, it's gonna be like, let's say 10. Yeah, that's a significant jump of upkeep. But yeah, those guys are very powerful war assets. That can chunk pretty much anything. Even super combatants might just die to them, especially once they go berserk. Yeah, let's just take a look. Yeah, you start with water 2, earth 1, and nature 3 income. Very good. Actually, starting income of gems that you definitely can use. Also, yeah, your first city increases productivity growth. So that's pretty cool effect. That means that you can play around with scales a little bit more. Of course, the higher your dominion is in that province, the harder that province leans towards your scales, even if there's a site that alternates scales normally. So that's worth keeping in mind. Now, let's take a look at the pretender I've made. Who knows where the name comes from? It's a good show. So, Anunnaki of Love and War. I think this is like a quite solid pretender choice for Ur in vanilla, more so in the Hellenika. I kind of tried play around with different ideas, but I did end up on going with her anyways, because it really has paths that you care for to begin with, and then I managed to squeeze in something else by going quite awful scales, but you can afford that. So Turmoil 3, because you have plenty of recruitment points anyways. Your units are cheap in recruitment points. Same story with Sloth. Your units are cheap on resources. You don't really care about it. Of course, it hits your income as well, but let's expand more, right? E3 technically could get even more scales if I went cold too, but I like to keep my mobility. I don't want to deal with snow, so that's why heat 3 is the choice. Now, this is the painful one. I'd love to fit in some growth to begin with, because again, your capital, thanks to the events, is gonna be growing a lot of population from events. And if you were to add growth on top of that, your capital can be easily the most profitable province in the game. Like out of all the other players, whatever the hell they have, the Eridu capital can be the largest population, largest income province, even with bad scales like that. I mean, if they were good scales, I mean, that would be even crazier, but just because of how much population you have thanks to events. Oh my gosh, actually, I didn't mention you that. Can I see it from here? No. Sorry, I completely forgot. Salma, right? That mage that I said that this is like one of the best mages we have, the water one and nature one. Yeah, they have an awesome effect. Wherever Salma is present in a province, every turn she increases population of that province by 100. So in a course of 20 turns, she just increased population by 2,000 in that province. Like those are serious numbers. You can, again, it also works on a capital. So not only you get your wedding events, but also Salma sits there, and that's where stacking it with growth further. That really is a significant increase of income through the course of the game for you. And sadly, I just couldn't afford it. But also the site on your capital and the primordial clays that you are making, they do increase production and growth. So that's kind of why I did go with 0 in growth, because I have other means of increasing the growth. The issue is, of course, if your dominance has high score, it does fight the scales coming from the site quite hard. So you'll see in the game that my scales just keep on jumping in the capital or in the other provinces. It's still a chance-based competition, so hey, growth 1 probably would be cool to squeeze in. I mean, in general, I like to not be maxing scales in general because, sorry, I said general twice, because there are often thrones that do affect that. So if you're lucky and get growth thrown next to you, that's brilliant. That's gonna really help you out throughout the game. Now, Misfortune 2, kind of no-brainer if I want to take Big Bless. I'm never going Misfortune 3. Misfortune 3 is too brutal. And drains, neutral magic. It's I'd like to have some magic. It would make my mages that are quite efficient researchers already even that much more efficient. And the also big deal is because as you see, she's awake. That for that bless to be taken together with these scales, this dominion score. The reason is I want to have her awake and help me out with expansion. At least with 0 in magic, there is some research done to begin with, and with her researching a little bit early on, it does give her the vital self buffs that she can cast to be able to expand without dying. So yeah, for blesses, minor and major shock resistance. I mean, there is for that is twofold. A, it deals with your enemy casting nasty lightning spells at you. And B, it gives you option to cast Wrathful Skies, right? You do have access to air. You can summon air freeze, like I mentioned, Ugulus. They're awesome summoned air-free mages. They can do storm, they can storm power, and they can cast Wrathful Skies. And if your army doesn't use mundane troops and just sacred, suddenly you don't care because all of your units are immune to the Wrathful Skies. Sorry, Wrathful Skies. I always mistake it. Wrathful Sky is the global, isn't it? Oh no, sorry, it's Wrath of the God. That's the. Jesus, I never remember. What I'm trying to talk about is the combat battlefield spell that causes lightnings to strike, and it strikes twice as often when there's storm up, which there always will be because storm is a broken spell. Fortitude. This is the chunker. 8 Earth Incarnate, which is fine, she's awake. Built-in resistances to pierce, slash, and blunt. This is a drastic increase of survivability for your swamp dragons. Not so much, I mean, still increases in survivability for your mages and Enkidu Chosen, but this is tailored mainly for the Mushusus and Sirushes. This makes them so much nastier in combat, so much more durable. Like it technically doubles hit points of Sirus, right? He suddenly has 200 hit points against those damage types. Magic weapons. I wish I could skip it. I really don't like taking magic weapons. And I mean, it hurts me even more because the Sacred Enkidu have built-in magic weapons, but If I want to rely on my dragons for the late game to deal with Ethereal, to deal with Mistform, they need magic weapons. It sucks. I wish I didn't have to take it. I wish I could take just resistances, but I can. Now, finally, to round up this nonsense of Fortitude, there's regeneration. Yeah, built-in regeneration on a chassis that has 102 hit points. Yeah, it's healing 11 hit points per turn. Like, how are you gonna kill Seers, honestly? It's Dominion Spreader, so they're always blessed, right? But that, I didn't mention that's the extra effect of being Dominion Spreader. So I can use them even without Mage leading them, Priest leading them. They will be always blessed. They are by default reducing your damage by half. They have 17 protection, jumping to 22 when they're berserking. And they regenerate 11 hit points per turn. And then, of course, I can cast Mass Regeneration later on in the game. So that's going to be 20% regeneration. They take Quickness on top of them. They take Moss Body on top of them. And I mean, later as well, I can easily cast Army of Fog. They're insanely strong troop. They're very powerful. That's what I'm relying on in this strategy. Now, there's a certain issue with this game, though. It's going to be played on Cosmos, something like that. I don't remember quite exactly how it's called. It's Boss something. Boss being one of the more prominent figures in Dominion's community. Bosmos, I think that's the name. So it's like a series of couple planets and whatever other nonsense. It's a couple thousand provinces. I don't know exactly how many, maybe not couple thousand, but I know well over 1,000 provinces, that's for sure. And it also steals a lot of assets from Heroes of Might and Magic, which is pretty funny. It keeps on bothering me, even though it's turn 40 or something. And I still can't live with it. But yeah, this is the god. And yeah, sorry. Of course, besides the Blessed Tailord for my Swamp Dragons, and actually giving her also amazing fighting prowess in my own Dominion. The paths allow me to cast some amazing globals. Mother Oak will be the big one to begin with. There's also Earthblood Deepwell to get the riches from beneath just to help me out with income. Air, I can boost it. Air and Earth gives me Staff of Magic Mastery. So, that gives me a shot in some air globals as well. Astral 4 together with Earth is enough to get myself to Astral 6 with a coin and a hat. Astral 6 gives me also a Ring of Wizardry or Sorcery. I can't quite remember which one is the lower Astral one. But hey, it's the ring that also busts Astral even further or all paths. So yeah, I can easily climb up to Astral 7 without empowering myself. That's cool. That means oh gosh, the Per Global, I forgot how it's called. Sorry, it's a bit late. The global that gives me pearls, I can potentially cast, although I'm pretty sure it's gonna be more contested by some other nations. But still, that gives me access to some late game, very powerful astral spells and summons. Astral 4 by itself, I think it's also enough to summon Apkalu. Apkalu, which costs 60 pearls as well, if I remember correctly. And yeah, those are going to be my very important late game mages to support my armies. And of course, for expansion, she can cast Iron Skin. She doesn't have to use turn to cast Temper Flesh because she has Fortitude. So Iron Skin, Personal Regeneration, Enlarge. There's Mistform, there's Mirror Images, there is Arrow Fend, or rather Air Shield for the Heralds and Vigil. Lack. I mean, Lack probably shouldn't be needed, but Body Ethereal is a thing. So yeah, she can do a ton. She's a very strong combatant. Also, yeah, she actually doesn't come with a weapon, so she only starts with a fist out of her hands. But because she doesn't have boot slot, which is a shame, she could definitely use it. She instead gets 2 attacks, and I mean, honestly, I take it. They're thanks to magic weapons. Actually, those also become magic weapons. So dual wielding, she has 5 attacks. She cannot wear boots of quickness, which is big sad. I'd love to be able to do that, but because I will be swimming in water gems later in the game, I'm pretty much certainly going to empower her in water. so she can quicken herself or cast fall vapors by herself. She can wipe armies thanks to that. More efficient than just bashing them with her feet and weapons. Other thing, I will also probably empower her in death. That's one of the big reasons why I'll be side searching with the Bone Readers. Death 2, she'll be able to twice burn herself. And, it's less for the fact that, she comes back to life because, again, being Eridu, I can just recall my pretender without any loss to the paths. But she will become quite a strong Tartarian chassis if she dies, thanks to the Twiceborn. That does open up extra possibilities, such as Rigor Mortis with her in a combat and stuff like that. Although I'd have to, of course, empower much more in depth with that. But I really like that chassis. For Eridu, I like this build. I wish I could squeeze in like even 1 point of Astral to get that MR slightly higher, but I really couldn't have worked out anything better than this. Maybe if I went Drain, but that could mess up some things. And as it is, with neutral in here, my research is quite solid anyways. So yeah, that would be what I think about Eridu, what I've got for the game that I will start uploading. Thank you so much for watching so far, if you did, and yeah, hope you enjoy the series. So I'll talk to you soon, I hope. Bye bye.